There we go. This over here.
So are other people who are joining
We
online?
sent a link. There might
Oh,
be
okay.
people come. Chris, who is over there, he will be kind of moderating those people, like
Okay.
so they might come.
Sure.
So yeah.
So then I just close
It-
this.
Yeah. And whether you want to stand here or I'm not sure.
Okay. Looking at this, I think I feel safer there. Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we are good to go.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
Shall we start? Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
You want to say something?
No, it's fine.
No, okay. So, hi everyone, and a warm welcome to Reshmi Pillai from Vrije University in Amsterdam. Amsterdam here, right from the airport almost.
Yeah. 2 hours in between.
So you will present.
We do say echo, right?
Oh,
You need to put it somewhere. Maybe here. Will it work if I'm muted here? Yes, this
yeah.
one, right?
No. It's this one.
Ah,
There we go. Oops,
okay,
sorry.
shall we?
We don't pay attention.
No.
We're muted now. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
We present an ongoing research project responsible AR for local journalism. And you will talk more in detail about that, so I've not tried to figure out what exactly what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have you here. Welcome to Bergen. Have you been here before?
Yeah, once.
Once.
So once in May.
Oh yeah.
So that,
Good.
yeah.
So welcome back.
Yeah, thanks.
And please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. So, okay. Hello, everyone. So thanks for being here. So I'm Reshmi. I'm a postdoc at the Vrije University, Amsterdam. And I also, 2 weeks back, I also joined in my new job as a core lecturer at the University of Amsterdam in computational social science. But I'm still working on my postdoc project. So, yeah. Okay. Do we know why this is not moving?
It's just because.
Oh, okay. Do I need to? Okay, no, it's fine. So this is so my postdoc project is part of an interdisciplinary project called Towards Responsible AI for Local Journalism. So if you're more interested to know about it, of course, you can scan the QR code and that will take you straight to the project homepage. So I mean, in short, it's an interdisciplinary collaboration with expertise in natural language processing. That's a bit where I come in, and communication science, both from the VU Amsterdam, and AI governance from the UvA, the University of Amsterdam, and media economics from LMU Munich and University of Stavanger. Do I pronounce it correctly? Yeah, yeah. So this is the key challenge that we look at in this project. So we know that the challenges for local news provision that varies. For example, in the USA, there are reports of news deserts. But for example, in the Netherlands, the local news and the regional news is still going very strong. But there are still challenges regardless of the exact status. And those challenges have serious consequences for local communities and in turn for democratic societies. So when we look at AI applications for news, it should also be responsible. So the focus is not just on increasing economic efficiency, but also to contribute to the broader role of local news to democratic societies while adhering to professional values and ethical standards. So then, so when I started as a postdoc at the VU, I had barely no knowledge about journalistic workflows. I have no journalistic background whatsoever. My background is from computer science and then to natural language processing and AI. I have worked on interdisciplinary projects before, but never something to do with journalism or news data. So then it also took a little bit of unlearning of my training of my background to not to focus too much on the solution, but actually to go a little back and to start with the problem. And for that, we used design thinking sprints with a media organization in the Netherlands. I'm not sure how many in the room have worked already with design thinking as a paradigm, some of you. But as a quick recap, design thinking helps us to, as a paradigm, it helps us to look at very complex scenarios, very complex domains where even the problem is not very clear. So, we go through these steps. So the first one is empathize. We sit with domain experts. So in this case, it was journalists and other newsroom workers from this media organization. And then we try to sit with them, do interviews, workshops, and then just a fly on the wall. For 2 days, I just sat in the newsroom to observe what's going on and do a fly on the wall approach and empathize with what's going on in a newsroom typically. And then again, through workshops together with the journalists, we facilitated them defining exactly what is the problem that they are facing. That of course there are many challenges, but then choose a problem which is most interesting and relevant in their context. And then we moved on to ideation, in which step the journalists they were given some inspiration of what AI could do, but again, it was ultimately for them to come up with visualizations of what an ideal scenario would look like. So they just created visualizations of what they wanted as a solution to the problem defined in the earlier step. And then only after the third step, our expertise started to come in. We contributed with our expertise in natural language processing and AI to come up with prototypes. And then in the testing stage, we again go back to the journalists and got the prototype evaluated by the journalists. So this is the overall steps that we did. And so what did we learn from the design thinking process? So journalists from Rijnmond, which is a regional broadcaster in the Netherlands, they identified problems in the following aspects. They identified problems in many problems, but those could be clustered into different blocks. So for example, diversity and inclusion, fragmentation of audience, and style guides, idea generation, content and headlines, and managing sources of context. Some of these problems had slightly more weightage than the others, but all of the problems were identified to be highly relevant and highly challenging for the journalists present during the design thinking workshops. So going ahead in this session, I thought to talk about some of the studies. We have 4 studies here, some of which are very directly linked to the problems identified in the design thinking session. Some of them were a little bit connected, but not exactly from the design thinking process. But overall, all these experiments, these studies are connected by the overarching motivation for using NLP techniques for understanding news text, and in most cases complementing to the news making process in some way. So there are four studies that we are looking at, but let's keep the session quite casual. So the studies are not necessarily dependent on each other, so they are also a bit independent. So if after a study, if you have something to share, thoughts, or maybe also questions, please feel free to raise your hands and ask. That would be very welcome. So the first study is about engagement-driven persona prompting. So we hear all about LLM prompting, and we played around. We experimented with prompting LLMs to create, rewrite news tweets in a way that it would result in more engagement. So in this experiment, we tried with 18 different combinations of 3 different large language models and 6 different prompting strategies, and we evaluated it using different metrics. And so this was done, this was published early this year. So this was done sometime last year. So at that time, we found that among the models that we explored, GPT-4 was giving, so with feedback and with persona prompting, when we prompt the LLM to assume a specific persona, it performed the best in terms of predicted engagement for the 3 language styles that we tried. So basically, we were trying to get the LLM rewrite the tweets in news tweets in formal style, factual style, and casual style. But at the same time, we do observe, despite the metrics and despite the scores, we do see that so there are still challenges. Despite the good performance of, for example, GPT style models, we do still see challenges. For example, the LLM prompted textiles transfer often relied on repetitive patterns. So for example, if we are giving it a tweet and prompting it to rewrite in a casual way, in many cases, in the majority of cases, it was adding a conversational tag. So no newspaper would want to sound repetitive in its style or its news tweet. So this kind of style diversity was a bit lacking when you try to rewrite rewrite with style transfer using LLMs. So that's one thing that we could identify. And if you're interested to know more about this experiments, discuss more, of course, you can. So this is the QR code of the publication, which was at Cooling earlier this year. So do we have any quick thoughts on this, or maybe we can go ahead to the next study? Okay. So study 2 is, it's some of these works are still not published in the review stage. So so this one, for example, so this is something we got interested in because we know that news organizations have been making use of social media like Twitter or other social media. I should call it X or Twitter to reach new audiences. And we also know that negativity is often identified in academic research as a core journalistic value and the question arises, how and under what conditions negative and positive sentiments impact audience engagement. So in many studies, we have seen that negative sentiments are stronger related to audience engagement than positive sentiments. But we've wondered whether it's the same in crisis situations. And the closest crisis situation we could think of was obviously COVID-19 scenario. And we wanted to explore the dynamics of the engagement and sentiments during COVID pandemic. So therefore, we investigate the impact of negative and positive sentiments in Dutch newspapers, COVID-related posts on audience engagement, and we try to change some conditions. So first one was negative sentiments and positive sentiments with directly on audience engagement, and we do a basic regression analysis with Python, and we also look at how about the stage of lockdown, strict or not strict, non-strict lockdowns in the Netherlands, and then we see the mediation analysis of it on engagement, and then we see the moderation effect So what we see is we used language tweets, Dutch language tweets, around 63,000. So this was collected during the COVID-19 time frame. So we see from the regression analysis that the positive sentiments in Dutch newspapers, COVID-related posts are related with audience engagement, but we don't see, okay, we will come to the negative sentiments a bit later. And then the parallel mediation analysis, we see that the positive sentiments again do mediate the relationship between the progression of COVID pandemic and audience engagement. And we also do moderation analysis in which we do not see a relation. But in all these cases, we do not see any statistically significant different relation for negative sentiments. So this is a bit, it's not in total agreement with what is typically observed in about the power of negativity in selling or engaging news. So this is one study that we did, and then we move on to so this is directly from the design thinking experiments we did with Raymond. And one, so if you remember in one of the previous slides, we also spoke about managing sources and contacts. And moving on from the design thinking steps, the journalists identified that this is a core problem that they really wanted us to explore different techniques in that, because they did find that for journalists it's always, I suppose it's the same in the Netherlands and Norway or everywhere in the world. For journalists, everything is now, and they have 100 different news stories coming in, and they know that probably somebody has written, maybe one of my colleagues have written something about this 2 years back, but I don't have the time to go through the archive, and they don't have the time to go through the archives and pick that one article, or what do we already know, what have we already written about this one topic, do we know some connections, etc. So those so that's a problem that they face in a daily basis. So there are far too many background documents for journalists to retrieve useful information, timely being the keyword here. And so since the system is designed in the context of, we were also talking to this regional broadcaster, so it's more in the context of a local news media. We basically consider two use cases. One is two use cases of such a system. That would be to extract local connections to global and national news stories. So if a national news story is coming in, let's quickly find does this have, or any person, any organization mentioned in this national news story, do they have any connection with somebody in our locality? So that's one. Second is identify, so maybe it's a local news story, but maybe it has a connection to something which happened in the locality in the past. So those are the two use cases that we considered. And we collected so past news reports related to this, and also Wikipedia pages related to the Rhineland-Rotterdam area to create a knowledge graph representation. And the envisioned user of the system will be a journalist who has to write a report about an incoming news story, and who's querying the system for background information. So in very simple words, an LLM renders the background information retrieved from the graph and presents it to the journalist. But the key point here is that the journalist ultimately still has the agency to decide whether or not to use that information. So the AI system is not writing the report by itself, but it's just providing background information snippets to the journalist. And then a bit more in detail, we constructed a knowledge graph leveraging multiple web-based information sources. And so based on this, for an incoming news story, background information snippets are retrieved from this graph and evaluated. And then we experimented with the LLM models. So we see a very interesting representation, a graph representation. So this was created using news reports and Wikipedia pages from the Rhineland Rotterdam area. And we see that most nodes are isolated or barely connected with each other, but a handful of nodes are very high in degrees. For example, key hubs like Rotterdam, a lot of articles are connected to the, not surprisingly, a lot of articles are connected to Rotterdam, or Feyenoord is a apparently famous football club in Rotterdam. And then Rijnmond, which is the, or which is the another name for the area, the geographical area. And so it's a relatively sparse graph, but there are a few highly connected nodes dominate the interactions. We also see the highest in degree and centrality metrics, like Rotterdam and Feyenoord, they act as pivotal entities and they connect different communities and topics. But at the same time, what we found is very interesting is even the little bit isolated nodes in the graph were also still useful for the journalists, because they were um, topics, news stories, which are discussed maybe a few times in the past news reports, but that's about it. But then something comes in, and the journalist is able to connect it quickly to this, isolated story, which is known to some people but not widely known. So it still makes for an interesting snippet for providing the background for this new incoming news. So then we did some community analysis, and we also see again there are large communities, but at the same time we have also see very small communities, such as highly specific or isolated subjects, as we just spoke about. A big challenge here was how to evaluate it. I assume this is also a big question to everyone who is working on a graph or RAG systems. So this is something we are still working on, but as of now, the evaluation is done on the quantitative evaluation is done on 3 metrics. So one is faithfulness, the fraction of information statements, the information snippets which are retrieved by the RAG, which can be verified as true given the news story's context. So this is really important. And entity coverage. So as a journalist, you give an incoming news story, maybe just 1 sentence, 2 sentences to the system. So there are entities mentioned in it. And then you see the system provides you some background information. So what fraction of entities in the news story are covered by the information statements given by the system. And entity novelty. So it's just not enough if the system barely repeats whatever information is present in the incoming news story. So that would make it a useless tool. So then the idea is that together with covering all the entities mentioned in the news story, it should also provide some novel entities which might trigger the journalist to think, oh, okay, this is a good connection, I can write more about it, etc. So these are the 3 metrics with which we are doing the evaluation, which is still under progress. And in addition to that, we also wanted to do qualitative evaluation with journalists from the same organization. And so these were the metrics which was used for the qualitative evaluation. So, for example, relevance, all on a scale of 1 to 5. Is the background information some way connected? Is it relevant to the news story in some way? Maybe serendipity. So this was something the journalists were quite enthusiastic about, because maybe this is relevant, but everyone knows about it. So what does the journalist get from having the system? Nothing, right? So the information snippets should also be serendipitous, as in it's a happy surprise. Okay, I didn't know that this information was in the background. So And usefulness, again, ultimately, how likely are you to use this information if you were writing a report on this news story? Diversity is was a very difficult parameter to explain and evaluate, but we still think it's important. Is the background information include perspectives, which is typically not covered. So it's a bit different. Something adds to the idea. Yeah, so this is study 3. If we have any thoughts or questions so far, we can, yeah.
This sort of a prototype, or is there a user interface for journalists, or is that?
It's a prototype. So in the evaluation stage, we provided examples to the journalists with yeah. So they would be giving one imaginary fictional news story, and then what the system provides as background information for this fictional news story. So only the news story is fictional. The background information retrieved from the system is not fictional. It's something which is already mentioned in maybe past news report somewhere. So yeah.
No, we know from before that it's really hard to get journalists to accept new tools.
Yes, but I think it helped a bit because we were already having this conversation ongoing with them for I think, almost 1 year before we ultimately did this evaluation. So we started with the design thinking process. So it was really very helpful that so for me, I mean, critically looking at myself, when I started the project, I started with AI. How do I do something AI in this? But then the so there is a professor of journalism in our group. Yael Dehan, maybe some of you know her. So she is. So I still remember what she exactly said. So let's keep AI out of the room for some time. So she said, I know that it's hard for you given your background, but we really have to keep AI out of the room for some time. And then let's just think about the newsroom and talk to them. Maybe there are challenges which AI can do nothing. There are many challenges. And yeah, so we started with this conversation without AI in the picture, and we just talked about the newsroom workflow, try to understand what's happening typically. What do you do from 9 to 5 or beyond? So we started the conversation from there, and then AI and or my training and expertise and everything came into the picture later. I think that helped. So I think personally, I think that helped in how receptive they were, because we were not pushing our expertise to the newsrooms, but it was yeah, something which, and yeah, as far as the circumstances would allow, organically evolving. So yeah.
It can be frustrating if you come with your fantastic ideas.
Yeah, so I'm going to change journalism, but we don't want to change journalism. So yeah, so it's true. So I think it's also that's something we will talk about a bit as a takeaway from this whole experience. But I think it's personally, it was a very important learning for me. Thanks. And then we move on to another ongoing study, which is about so LLM personas to identify cultural references. So this also comes from a little bit of personal motivation, because I have been living in the Netherlands for the past 5.5 years, but so even if I translate an online newspaper in Dutch to English, there are still many references that I completely just goes like this, because I have no clue. So maybe this report is about a celebrity, but I have no clue who that person is, what's his or her relevance in the cultural, ecosystem, cultural scenario in the Netherlands. But this is not just me. I think this is a global problem that so newsrooms worldwide face the growing challenge of addressing the needs and fostering meaningful connections with very diverse audience. And so can LLMs, LLM personas support inclusivity in news? I would like to put a disclaimer here that so we in this study we are just exploring the possibility. So the outcome we do expect and we do see to some extent that it cannot. We're not talking at all about replacing. We're just thinking about a scenario that we also identified in the original broadcaster that we spoke to. So the problem is that the newsrooms, at least in the media that we spoke to, and some other media organizations in the Netherlands, at least there, they do want to connect to diverse audience. But the newsrooms, they are not diverse themselves. So when you walk into a newsroom, you don't see a very diverse audience. So, sorry, a newsroom. So then they find this challenge. The long-term solution, of course, would be to have more diversity in the newsroom. Maybe that's one solution. That might still not solve the problem, but that's a long-term thing. So we are just exploring is can LLM personas do something in this? So of course it's an open question, and we are no way pushing that LLM personas are the solution. We do not think so, but we are just exploring the possibility. And then so this in this task of identifying cultural references in news reports, which pose challenges for non-native newsreaders. So going a bit to the background, so we do see that in most newsrooms there is an organizational commitment to diversity. Diversity is accepted as a core value and acknowledged as a core value, but at the same time, the so the diversity among editorial staff is it's as we also saw in our experience in the Netherlands, it's still an open problem. It's not easy to resolve. So there is still widespread absence of ethnic and racial minorities in top editorial and policymaking positions, and so we do see academic evidence that news workers often shape their decisions based on their understanding or composition of the audience, and it can very often these minority groups can also be interpreted as homogeneous entities, whereas in reality individuals and groups, they inevitably differ from each other. So it's a very complex scenario, admittedly. And we also see that what could be, so a core question here is, okay, we want to identify cultural references in news report, but what counts as cultural references? What exactly is cultural reference? And so we look at this textbook of translation, which is a landmark study in translation, machine translation. And so there, which presents a systematic or categorization of cultural entity in language, ecology, material culture, social culture, organization and customs, gestures and habits. So this is in the context of translation, translating from one language to the other. So the core problem is that when you translate something, for example, a food item to another language, there is no easy, uncomplicated, equivalent in the target language. But that's also relevant in contexts like this. And there have been other studies about culturally specific items or textually actualized items. They pose a translation problem because there is an equivalent in this language, but there is no equivalent in the other language. How do you do the translation? And even if you are able to translate, it loses the nuances, the connotations from the original text. So bringing that a bit out of the translation context into our context, we see that a non-native reader could also struggle with cultural features in language other than even other than the specific item. So it need not be just objects. So sometimes there are idioms, phrases in Dutch, which I know the English translation roughly. I mean, I don't need a translation tool. I can understand what the words mean, but I don't know what it's put together. What does it mean? I have no idea. What does it mean in this context? I don't know again. So this happen. So, or it can be a reference to a celebrity, a political event. So sometimes, drawing from my experience, I read a news story about a person who is unfortunately terminally ill, uh, traveling to India because it has already always been his dream to visit India. Uh, I think Himalayas or someplace in India. It was always his dream. So I just read that. I read it. I interpreted as that I couldn't understand the Dutch. So I interpreted it as a human interest story. But then out of just interest, I read a bit more about this, and then in another report, I saw that this person is not just it's he's actually a celebrity in the Netherlands, so it's not really an so I'm reading it in a different lens now. So it's about a person. He's a very renowned stand-up comedian in the Netherlands, but I completely so some of the content in the original report had connections to that, but I completely lost all that context because I didn't just know this person, but the newspaper kind of assumed that the reader, that is me, would know this person anyway. So this is the rough workflow we were trying to implement. So do a survey of the target audience. That's non-native readers in the Netherlands, and then form clusters and form personas representing clusters, and then let these personas identify cultural items in news text. Admittedly, we started just before summer, and then nothing really happened in the last few weeks. So we only have a very few responses, but then it's ongoing. So the survey consisted of 30 questions, and they were about the demographic background information, news consumption, Dutch language proficiency, external reference usage. So, for example, how often do you use Wikipedia to make sense of this news report, and cultural understanding challenges. And we do some K modes. So this comes again with a disclaimer that we have very limited survey results, but we just try to create clusters for the analysis, and we do see that, and then we try to so we created 4 personas, but we did see that the personas are rather similar to each other. We think that it's to do with the rather low number of survey respondents. We do hope that it's yeah. So then we see that the cultural references identified with the GPT-4o and Llama, they are a bit similar, and we see the same observation across personas. And this is also in progress. So very high. This is interesting actually, because we see that for large language models, or all the automated methods, we see that there is very super high recall and rather low precision. So what does it indicate? It indicates that the the automated methods, especially language models, they mark everything which it suspects to be cultural references as cultural references. But so the danger of such a system is that so ultimately, if this is used in a system where an LLM identifies the cultural references which could be difficult for the reader, and maybe there are some pop-ups which explains the terms for the reader, and if with this high recall and this low precision, if the LLM is identifying a lot of terms as something which I need more explanation, but I don't need any explanation. I already know this, so it can come across very patronizing, and it's yeah, it's can be even more disconnecting. So another example is so reporter Johann Zeitzma finds it strange and etc. So human coder does not obviously identify Johann Zeitzma as a cultural reference, but the automated methods play it safe a bit and try to identify many of the named entities wrongly as cultural references. Now we look at the overall picture. Sorry. So the core guiding ideas of this whole effort, this project was, so we look at the journalist in the loop and we identify the the problems in automated systems and language models at the moment, and we we do not uh, we do not um, envision our systems or any NLP systems to be replacing journalists, but at the same time complementing and support a human effort. So a journalist cannot realistically go through 300 different past news reports and to find the needle in the haystack, to find which news report in 2023 made a reference to this sports person that I need to write a story about today. So no human is able to do that, but that's where maybe AI can help. So of course the main agency is firmly maintained with the journalists, and uh, we also identify the benefits of involvement of domain experts, that is journalists in this case, in all the workflow steps, which helps in the evaluation. So looking ahead a bit, so beyond the use cases, so we looked at specific use cases, one about a RAG system, one about style transfer of tweets, one about something else. So it's all, admittedly, it's all a bit segmented. And we also see that sometimes, so this is something, a question which I found echoed in the Nordic AI in Media Summit earlier this year, that so beyond these use cases, there should be, or what should guide the overarching approach to AI adoption in news organizations. So this should be part of the big picture. So we shouldn't be at the risk of losing the forest in favor of the trees. And beyond the hype, so let's bring AI to the workflow is something that news organizations, or sometimes not even news organization, but many organizations think that way, that let's do something to do with AI, but no. The question really should be, how can, or maybe even can AI support workflow challenges? Maybe it can't. That's okay. I mean, that's something we can explore again. So beyond the traditional role, so that's a slightly controversial thought that I also see echoed in some of the venues. So we also see evidence for news avoidance and different types of news audience who have specific reasons for avoiding news. And so, can AI adoption inspire broader changes? So this is a transition, this is a transformation which is going on now. So AI adoption or non-adoption AI, the presence of AI has inspired at least conversations about transformations overall in newsrooms and rethinking, reflecting. A lot of news organizations are now really investing time and effort in really understanding what's going on in the technology. How can we make the best use of it? So we also recommend that this can be a good moment to reflect on the overall if there is a if it's a moment for traditional role change. So there is also discussions about content-oriented news to community or change-oriented news, but that's a very broad discussion. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. So super happy to be here, and so it's when I start my uh, postdoc, of course, we'll be looking at different groups which are working on the same. So of course, Media Futures is one of the first few names which came up, and it's been in planning for I think I then met Lawrence and then Gussie at a different venue. It's been in planning for so much time, but I'm super happy that it could finally happen, right? Uh, Thanks to both of you, especially, but thanks to all of you for being here today. So, yeah. Any questions, thoughts, and feedback also, because a lot of it is still under publication, will be published sometime soon, but yeah.
I was thinking about the personas.
Yeah.
How do you turn survey responses into personas?
Yeah, so there is,
If you do the survey, you already plan what sort of personas do you want?
mm, we try to keep it a bit broad. So the only criteria that we do for the survey respondents is that they are non-native news readers of Dutch news outlets. So we do not look at any other criteria. We try to get, so the real challenge there is to have access to diverse news, diverse news readers who, for example, in the first attempt I did was through my own LinkedIn page, and then also through so I am a non-native news reader in the Netherlands, so I have my own social network, right? So I've been living in the Netherlands for 6 years. Of course, I know people. So then I have this. So it was through a little bit word of mouth or social network channels. But we learned a bit from that. It doesn't really result in a very heterogeneous response base. So because I was advertising through LinkedIn and whoever I know, so then it really comes. We do see a lot of respondents who are highly educated, who are professionals, who are in a specific age group even. So it's not very diverse. So then the next steps that we took or still taking is try different channels to reach out people. So in theory, we have kept the survey criteria as very broad. It's just non-native news readers, but the challenge in actually making it as broad as it claims is reaching through different channels. So we have the next step we are doing is through the university or even in one of my colleagues is in she's on a PhD project but in a different research question, but she also needs to access the same non-native news readers. So the other day we were just venting to each other about the difficulty to reach diverse segments of this non-native news readers base. So then one strategy we thought about, why not? We can just stand in Amsterdam Zuid station and just distribute pamphlets. So that's maybe a not very diverse collection of people, right? So we will just keep trying through different sources, because clearly LinkedIn doesn't get me a very heterogeneous audience. So yeah, so we're trying through different sources. And then the idea is that, so right now we just created the clusters using the responses that we got, but again, the responses that we have now is rather homogeneous. So the clusters are not very well defined. So that's a weakness. So that's something we want to correct before the next revision. So yeah, so the idea is that we try to reach out to more people through different diverse channels, and so possibly, hopefully, that will result in uh, more diverse responses, which can in turn be formulated into different personas. That's the idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the talk. I have a question regarding the second last slide you had with regard to AI in journalism beyond the hype.
Oh, yeah, this one, right? Yeah.
This, the last row, news avoidance. We have a couple of projects with regard to news avoidance at this
Okay,
time.
yeah.
People are not here at the moment, but there are this idea of reframing news headlines or the entire article that are then more tailored to maybe younger audiences, or reframing the headline or the entire article in a more humoristic way to make it maybe more easy to deal with heavy content. And then we make some small studies. And I just wondered, do you have other examples how maybe AI could help to overcome news avoidance? Anything there?
Yeah, but this is I'm stepping out of my expertise a bit here. I'm in no way an expert in journalism, but then we also see that a lot of discussions happening in solutions-based journalism. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. So it's the core idea is that, okay, of course, we talk about problems, and it's important that we identify problems, especially at community level. But at community level, it's also interesting to see what solutions have been proposed for this problem, or what solutions have worked for this problem elsewhere in the world. So I think, for example, that's just an example. So it's so the news avoidance problem. One of the core responses have been how do we make news more, even negative news, a bit positive by not sugarcoating it. Of course, we do not want to play down the intensity of the problem. We do not want to do that. We as in journalists do not want to do that. But how do we say that, okay, we acknowledge this problem, but at the same time, okay, there is water scarcity in this country. This is severe. This has so many even fatal repercussions. But at the same time, this is a solution which has been done elsewhere. So techniques like AI can be really helpful for journalists to catch information like this quickly. So that's one example that I can think of. So as you said, for news avoidance, there are, rephrasing, as you said, can be another tool. So yeah, it would be really interesting to think in that direction. Yeah.
You said sugarcoating. I mean, so removing everything about problems, everything about conflict.
Yeah, so that's the journalists do not want that, right? So if you write a report about, again, water scarcity, so you do not want to re reduce the intensity of the problem in your report. So all you want to acknowledge it, but at the same time, there is still a way to turn it more towards solutions rather just talking on and on and on about just the problem. I think that's important. You had a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe just a comment, because their comment reminded me of a paper that I recently read
Okay.
about the narrative. So the pattern
Yeah.
in the narratives.
Yeah.
So it is not only, I mean, it's not only like the words that you use or the format that you use to engage people, but it is like the type of the patterns in the narrative, or basically the types of storytelling that will engage people.
Yeah.
So it was, and they came up with this formula or this pattern that will that proved to be successful in engaging, but I don't know if that will imply avoidance. News of that. I mean, engaging people probably has the assumption that people is already reading. I don't know, but they tested the pattern and
the narrative patterns, right?
Yeah, the Batman.
Yeah.
Narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, potentially that could be another way. Yeah. I mean, interestingly, it's also actually interesting to look at the narratives that media is representing, media is talking about AI. So that's also an interesting narrative. So there has been something like, what's it called again? It's um, hope or doom. So I read in some paper that it's AI. I mean, technology has always been, but especially now AI is the most common narrative of AI in news media is the extremes, as in it's either the savior, the solution, the panacea to all problems, or the doom, the absolute disaster that's going to happen, end of privacy, etc., etc. Yeah. So, yeah. Any other thoughts?
I mean, use of audience is maybe not the problem that the biggest social and economic problem.
Yeah, it has. So again, so I think I do believe that it's all it's it's more of a journalistic or a challenge, which has strong political and social factors playing in the background, and it's a very complex problem. But potentially, AI can be a helpful tool in some of the um, uh, yeah, some of the ways journalists can try to address the news avoidance a bit, maybe. Lawrence, you have a question? Is the thought?
Yes. I had a question on I think that's the second study on the tweets.
Yeah.
When you had already the papers written by the journalist that then with prompt to try to generate the tweet, the X,
Yeah.
so the content for the social media.
Yeah.
So you told that you try different prompting techniques.
Yeah.
And then you assess the techniques only with the metrics. I would like to know how, on which basis you choose the metrics, because as you know, metrics, there are a lot of debates surrounding that about the accuracy and the ability to correlate with human judgment. So did you assess also with true human judgments? And
Yeah.
how did you measure? Because metrics is not about the quality of the
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
of the content. So how did you assess the quality?
Yeah, so we did have human coding of the human assessment of the tweets about after the rewriting. So about the quantitative metric, one important metric was also predicted engagement. So there was a thing bird-based model which was trained to predict the engagement. So it was trained on a corpus of several tweets and its actual engagement which it got, and then it was it was asked to it was trained with good scores, and then it was asked to predict the engagement on the rewritten tweets. So that was one metric. So then we look at what is the predicted engagement on the rewritten tweet. So that was one. And there were two other automatically done metrics. At the same time, we identify that these things are rather subjective. For example, the one weakness that we really identified, for example, the casually rewritten tweets, they were really getting high scores on predicted engagement. But because probably the model saw that casually written tweets in the training data, they probably got higher engagement. So it used to get a higher predicted engagement. But when a human coder looks at it, they also found that there is a pattern in many of the casually rewritten tweets, because the LLMs very often just add a conversation tag, something like something like this is, today is a cold day, isn't it? So something like that, just to make it, or maybe just throw in just one casual bird somewhere to make it. So it scores high still on the automated systems, automated evaluation, but a human coder does identify that this kind of, adding a pattern. So this kind of a system will not be very useful for a newsroom because, yeah, newsroom typically do not want the same kind of, so all the casual tweets to be followed by a conversation tag. That would be, yeah, rather strange for a news media. So then we do, as you said, we do identify there is a disparity between what automated systems say that this is the good, well-performing model, but at the same time, we do see that there has to be still a lot of refinements before such a system can be used without human intervention, if at all,
And have you
in a
tried
newsroom.
iterative prompting?
No, not in this study at all, but yeah.
Is the paper published?
Yeah, this is published, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's in the, I can also share the link with
Yes.
you. So it's somewhere. Yeah,
I will find it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. sure, thanks. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Yeah.
But the third, I think that in the looking ahead, that's something really important to emphasize is that many newsroom are there thinking we need to use AI.
Yeah,
They
so
don't
that's,
know why.
yeah,
and
exactly.
how.
That's looking at the
That-
second
that's-
point.
That's the major, I think the major issue is that you cannot put all on AI, and there are probably also a lot of over expectation about what it can do and what it cannot do. So by with your experience, with your work within the Flame newsroom, have you noticed or have you felt something about AI literacy or the importance of AI literacy or lack of AI literacy?
Yeah, that's a very very good question. So, uh, I think over the years, so when ChatGPT came in, of course, there was a sudden question of is AI or ChatGPT going to take our journalistic jobs? But I think over the months or even years, the question is now a bit. It's not, the response is not of an initial panic or initial wonder. Wow, here is a tool, amazing tool. So they are moving from there, and they are also starting to use many AI based tools for uh, smaller tasks such as editing, fine tuning, or other tasks. So one sentiment that I have heard in some of the interactions with the journalists is that sometimes they said that they feel a bit guilty is not the right word. It's do I become a less of a journalist if I use AI to for some of the writing tasks? So that's one sentiment we heard in one of the workshops, which was really interesting. I mean, so then what I replied was, so but these tasks change, right? Because when I started programming a long time back in my bachelor's degree, everything had to be, there was you just write on an editor, there was no coding supporting tool and everything. But now you have Gemini, you have Copilot, and people are creating writing code so quickly. It doesn't make you less of a programmer. I don't think so, because the core values of critical thinking, critical reasoning, problem solving of a programmer still remains the same. So I think the same way. So that's adding to the thoughts that you shared. This is one interesting thought that I have heard from journalists that, yeah.
That's interesting. Also, the view from a computer
Yeah.
scientist. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great comparison or analogy. And what do you think, or what was maybe the feedback from the journalists? How do they see their role if AI tools are taking over maybe many of the actual writing processes
Mhm.
that maybe the content input, the idea, the narrative. What would be the role of the journalist? Maybe more as a consultant with a highly qualified PhD-like assistant, or what is the division of labor?
Yeah, so in there, I mean, at least to the journalists that I have interacted with, so some of them were really positive about incorporating AI, and they really wanted this exact problem, right? So they acknowledged that there are no matter how good they are as a journalist, there are still human limitations. For example, you cannot just, and they also identify that, especially in regional media, I don't know if it applies to the media in Norway, maybe it doesn't. They also see that, so it's somewhere there in the system, but sometimes it's not very organized. That's not a problem related to AI, really. It's an organizational problem, but that's something where maybe AI can help a bit. So they explained to me a scenario that, okay, there is an incoming story. I really know that somebody in that office had written something about this some time back, but everything is so vague, and they don't have the time to put date and faces, names to this something somewhere, someone somehow, etc. So they don't have time for that. So then they told me that sometimes they end up researching and finding the exact same contact their colleague maybe did 7 months before. So it's the same effort being done by someone else, but same question, same everything, but again. So yeah, so that those are the kind of situations that they really hoped that AI, but again, probably you don't need AI for that. But anyway, they wanted technological innovation to make a difference.
We were both at the Nord Media, and
Yeah.
we saw the AI in Nordic Media in Copenhagen in
Yeah.
April.
Yeah.
Was your, I mean, this is a conference with media companies showcasing the use of AI, and I've been quite disappointed because they should only efficiency and sort of using the AI for the same processes that you've always had in the news. Sort of there's no new transformative uses of
Yeah.
AI.
So I was there only for the first day.
Yeah.
The second day I had another project meeting to do with my postdoc, which I couldn't skip. I had to be there. So this first point really is inspired from my what I heard in the Nordic AI in media. So somebody, I don't remember which speaker, but somebody said that so there is a lot of use cases being presented as okay, I can do this. So small additions, etc. But where is it all leading the media organization? I think I strongly agree with that we really need to probably it would be helpful if media organizations can have a little bit not about applications, not about small applications which can improve the efficiency here a bit and maybe make your job a bit there, etc. But in addition to that, it's also important to have an overarching idea about, okay, this is a transformative technology. It can do a lot of good, but it also comes with so many risks. What is our overall organizational policy and vision regarding this transformative technology? I think, at least in my experience, I find very few conversations in this, what's the word for that? It's um, a overall way. I find too many effort going on and creating. Of course, we also create prototypes. Everyone creates prototypes, etc. But beyond that, I think from the media organizations, it would be really helpful to have this overarching kind of vision or idea or understanding. That's something that I also heard at the NAMS, the Nordic AI Media Summit.
Yeah, you had media economics mentioned on your first slide.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the return on investment in AI.
Yeah,
Is quite, I mean, it's some returns are really high, like the BG, which developed the transcription tool, you
yeah,
just been amazingly useful for journalists.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of things that just don't show up on this sort of return on investment scale.
Yeah.
So huge uncertainty about what is sort of actually giving gains.
Yeah, so it's hard to say, right? So as far as, I mean, I'm not an media economics person, but from what we observe, so there can be some direct benefits or immediate benefits like this, but we also see that organizations are also looking at indirect effects, such as connecting better to their audience segments, which in turn might, so they want to write news stories which can connect with different audience segments. So that might or might not result in revenue, but as of now, it's more like an indirect benefit that they are looking at.
That's
So-
something that Media Futures is working a lot of recommendations.
Okay.
Public service is also in Europe, and so work a lot on this distribution side. They are not really interested in putting too much AI efforts in the news production, but
No.
they really do focus on the user needs, and the user needs for them are the audiences. And they are really well inspired by the works from the BBC, for instance. Just the lead in this early.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or feedback? Anything would be good. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank
I think-
you.
Thank you.
Are you working with media companies or?
We all somehow do, because the projects of the PhDs are also kind of closely connected to the researchers.
Do you have like these design sprints with journalists and media managers?
I think journalists, some of us, Pillai, for example, he was working with editors at TV2, and how they chose related headlines, for example, like what technical tasks doing the workflow, and how maybe recommender systems could help chose the best next related article, stuff like that. And then there's a lot of experimental stuff, how to reframe and rewrite articles, actually.
Okay.
There are a couple of things. There's one PhD candidate, Jane, he's not here today. He also worked on how to use fear and hope frames in climate change journalism. That would have been interesting if you could talk to anybody about it, and how that influences readability, and also maybe addresses things like news avoidance, that people deal with important topics,
Okay.
of whom they do not feel overwhelmed. Yes.
But you have a card, so you can get inside here, have discussions with people if you want.
Oh, yeah, that
You're
would be-
staying now,
Yeah, I'm staying here till Friday. So I'm flying back on Saturday morning. So yeah, 2 days, I guess I'll be around somewhere here, right? So
feel free to text also people, and yes.
okay, so I think maybe I can check with you, Lawrence, right? Yeah, for the contact of
Yes.
people, I can directly do.
Mr. Pillai is.
In German.
Are you there?
Hi, yes, yeah, I was listening to
Yes.
really interesting talk. Yeah.
Oh,
Should we also leave a picture of the speaker and the hosts?
yeah. Yeah, it would be good.
Super villain.
Hello.
Yes, I heard a lot of people here.
Yeah, I was enjoying the talk. Yeah, very interesting talk. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Uh, so I'm actually working at a PhD here in media future and just trying to work on recommender systems and trying to explore how recommender systems can take in journalists or editors' values into that. So yeah, so I'm exploring that domain, how we can use, for example, AI to imitate how journalists or editors pick up related news articles. So yeah,
Okay.
in that area, I'm trying to explore how AI can be useful. But as you said that in one of your points that right now it's also more about increasing their efficiency of their workflow. So it's more like a tool that helps them pick up the related stories much more faster. So, and yeah, so exploring that direction.
Yeah, but I think it would still be interesting to see how those kind of uses evolve
Mhm.
in the course of time.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any more comments or questions, Bilal?
No, I was just trying to get more some insights, some new discussion points, and some other things that I can also explore uh, during my PhD. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask something?
Of course.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you do design sprints at TV2?
Well, the way I started was that I was like brought to the newsroom, and then I was shown how they were actually uh, their process of workflow, of how they were selecting news articles. And then I wanted to use how I started how I can use AI to do that task. So it was more like sitting with them and just observing how they selected news articles and then trying to use AI to do that task. So I started with their that way. But next, the thing that we are trying to look at is how we can use AI, especially how we can use LLMs as journalists and editors in helping build up a recommender system. So yeah, so it's an ongoing research. So most likely in the next half of my PhD, I will be exploring how we can use AI uh, uh, incorporating editors or journalist values in building recommender system. So it's like an ongoing project right now.
So do you mean to use some kind of personas who can, uh, so when you say LLMs, so do you mean LLMs acting as personas
Exactly,
in
yeah.
the place of journalists and editors picking up specific news
Exactly. So
items, right? Okay.
exactly. So we tried to use GPT-4 4.0 mini, and we gave it a persona that you are a journalist and you have to pick up related news stories and then, yeah, help with that process. So yeah, so it was more like giving LLM as a persona of a journalist and see whether it does a good job in selecting related news articles or not. So we got some interesting results. So then we thought that maybe we can also further use LLMs in building a recommender system somehow. And it's an ongoing research right now that I'm looking
Okay.
into.
So how do you assess that it's a good pick? For example, do you compare what the LLM picks to what a human journalist or a journalist, there is only human journalist, picks? So do you have some sort of a comparison like that?
Yeah. So in my case, I had these ground truths. So I had like historic data about how the journalists were
Oh,
picking
okay.
up related articles. So it was like a gold standard data set that
Oh, okay,
I
that's
had.
really
And
nice.
then And then it was a bit more easier to evaluate it, like whether if you give LLM this persona, whether it was doing a good job of picking up the same articles as a journalist or an editor was picking up. So it made the evaluation a bit more easier. So using that research, we built a prototype and then we shared that prototype with the journalists to get
But
their much more feedback on it. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's clear. Thanks.
This is not
Thanks.
more like a joke. How can journalists always be gold standard? I mean, they do quite sloppy work. They always tell
Yeah.
Hope there's no journalist in this room. Hopefully.
No, the one we have actually.
Okay, good.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
That's a really interesting question, like whether they are the gold standard or not. But it was a good starting point to improve their workflow. So, yeah. But yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.